I really need a some kind of intro when I'm doing something that doesn't have a cold open. Because starting a video with just so isn't probably the best idea. I guess I could use this, but this is just. So for a while now, about 3 years, maybe 4, I've had a burning thought that's been festering in my idiot boy brain that I just can't seem to push out. It's a simple thought, but, here we are. It's that My Name is Earl is just adult 100 Deeds of Eddie McDowd. Eddie McDowd started in 1999. My sister was getting ready to enter one of my city's, nay, maybe even the country's best high schools, or junior high and high schools, but the fact remains the same. All the while, I was a god-awful student who didn't take the time to learn anything. It's remarkable. I remember anything from elementary school, let alone a niche late 90s live-action Nickelodeon show about a dog. Somehow Eddie McDowd had 3 seasons, 2 more than I originally thought. Granted, the last 2 seasons were more of a Frankenstein of the second season. I guess it's not really a Frankenstein when you consider that it's chopped up, not put together. So really, it's more of a chopped up season than a Frankenstein season. In 2005, 3 years after Eddie McDowd had ended in 2002, My Name is Earl premiered. My sister was getting ready to enter an Ivy League school. You know, the kind of schools that just pump out war criminals? This isn't, that wasn't hyperbole. Did you know that, if you look up a lot of the perpetrators of war crimes on Wikipedia, it says they went to an Ivy League school. And I should also state that my sister is not a war criminal. She's not on that list of people doing war crimes. She doesn't do that. You don't have to worry about war crimes in my family. Meanwhile, I did a book report on The Secret Garden in which I covered the cover with fake moss because I thought it'd be funny to watch my teacher have to deal with that. And it was funny. It was a mess. Here is the thing about My Name is Earl, though. I thought that show had 8 seasons, but in reality, it was just 4. One more than Eddie McDowd. Perception of time was way different when I was in high school, huh? Now that I'm older and I just have an idiot adult brain, I can now draw conclusions like this. Also, I have trouble getting to sleep at night, so I think about things like this. Now, I probably know what you're thinking, and is this all that important? I'm not sure yet, and I'll probably forget that question as I absorb these 2 shows. Doing some digging in terms of the main cast, production, and crew, there isn't a real connecting thread, which is even crazier when you consider the fact that these 2 shows are just so insanely similar. Both shows revolve around the idea of a force that compels you to be a better person. Also, the titular characters start with the letter E. Earl learns about karma and has decided to follow through on it to do good deeds due to his good fortune. Though, in contrast, Eddie is forced to do good deeds or he'll be a dog forever. The circumstances are wildly different, but the idea is still the same. Do good, and good will happen. So, for this comparison, I just watched the first seasons of both shows. This was mainly due to, as the show runs longer, the characters get a little bit funnier. What I mean is Flanderization of characters. Ned Flanders is kind of not what he used to be anymore. So they kind of just get stripped down to 3 main components of who they are as characters. So, taking just a light peruse at just the episode numbers, Earl accomplishes more than Eddie. This is mainly due to the volume of episodes being so wildly different. But also, Earl has a larger base number of deeds to do, 258, to Eddie's original 100. This doesn't even cover the fact that Eddie doesn't even do half the deeds, though I'll get to that later. What I hope to accomplish from watching these two shows is to divine that the only true difference between the shows is who it's actually made for. Obviously, it's going to be true. Writing, budget, and production are all factors we should be taking into consideration here. This is mainly due to NBC probably giving more of a budget than a show on Nickelodeon. I figure a lot of kids' shows' budgets are kind of low just because the nature of getting kids' shows out, they don't really care about production. They'll just, what'll kids watch? Also, Adult Swim gives pretty low money figures to people who make shows for them, but I think that's more of an artist versus just doing it kind of dealio. So what I did was aggregate key information from each episode into a spreadsheet that's easy to read. For me, at least, it's easy to read. Might not be for you. From left to right, it reads what the setup for the deed was, what he did to accomplish said deed, if it was initially his fault, and how many deeds he has left to go by episode's end. I then highlighted each row with green, yellow, and red. Green signifying that he had accomplished the deed and it had counted. Yellow meaning it was ambiguous if the deed had even counted, and red meaning he didn't do a deed at all. This was necessary since both shows had a very visual and auditory cues about if they had accomplished deeds in the first place. But at times, they would seemingly do a deed and the show wouldn't mention if it had counted or not. So I had to kind of use my own personal judgment if I had deemed it a deed or not. I opted for usually it to be green, but sometimes it was yellow. So with this preamble out of the way, let us proceed with the 1999 show that was so embarrassing to be on, I guess, that 2 actors quit after season 1. 100 Deeds of Eddie McDowd. I'm Eddie McDowd. I'm a dog and I talk. I used to be a kid, a bad kid. But then I messed with the wrong guy. He turned me into a dog. Can you believe this? That freak turned me into a dog. To be a kid again, I have to do 100 good deeds, and the only person that can hear me talk is the last person I picked on. Now I'm living with this kid and his family. They love me, but they treat me like a dog. Now, before I get into the show's makeup, I have a couple things to get out of the way. Otherwise, it's all we'll be able to think about. Whoa, Danny Tamborelli is in this? Whoa. Brenda Song is in this? Whoa, the music fucking rips, my guy. And most importantly, Eddie McDowd 100% deserves this punishment. This was the breaking point that causes him to become a dog.
Second shot, high and tight, but he swung. Third pitch, he was down for the count. And then I just started whipping rocks around, you know, for the fun of it. But then...
Eddie McDowd is a dick, and seemingly doesn't really change for the better while he's in dog form. There's even an episode in which he is such a bad dog that he gets an extra deed tacked on to his total.
Yeah, well, now I'm going to give you a little shove. In fact, I'm shoving your remaining deed total back up to 92.
So really, it should be called 101 Deeds of Eddie McDowd. Before I even started this project, I thought the show was actually called 100 Good Deeds of Eddie McDowd, as if there was a difference between a good deed and a regular deed. I don't really know what a bad deed would look like. I guess taking candy from a baby, or like not walking an old lady across the street. Those would be bad deeds. I don't know. But I guess the point is I thought the show was called 100 Good Deeds. But it's just 100 Deeds. That was really my mistake. The whole series consists of 40 episodes, the first season accounting for half of that. Now, here is how the show or episodes were typically structured. Eddie is either selfish or hounding for deeds. A deed presents itself, and he either makes it worse or fails to see the deed. He resolves the deed after learning a real lesson and is one step closer to boyhood. For example, Season 1, Episode 18. There is a mean dog who claims a spot by a hot dog stand. Eddie is now afraid to go to that area because the dog is mean to him.
Yikes! Talking is overrated! I'll email you!
But when his kid takes him on a walk, Eddie tries to lead him away from the dog, but the kid wants a hot dog.
Justin!
Someone help!
The kid proceeds to get scared and Eddie dogs up.
Maybe you can mess with me, but you can't mess with my friend. He's my owner and it's my job to protect him.
And confronts the dog. 91 deeds to go, Eddie. This follows the theme that Eddie slowly realizes that his de facto family and best friend actually mean something to him. The issue with Season 1 is that 8 of the 20 episodes don't have him accomplishing a deed. And at one point, the actual season finale was never actually aired. You know, typically how season finales and shows like this have two-parters to have show cliffhanger and a big resolution. The second part never aired. The resolution being Eddie has to make a choice between his life and his owner's.
Time waits for no dog.
Man, him or me? Him or me? Well, what am I gonna do?
Time's up!
Instead, what we got was a Christmas episode. An episode in which they don't even do nothing happens. He doesn't do a deed, there's nothing to learn. The deed that was replaced, or the episode that was replaced, has to now count because going into Season 2, we are at an 88 deeds done, not 89, which was my count, having not counted what I didn't see happen. So now I have to assume that episode aired. I can't find that episode, and nobody even talks about that episode not even happening. Like, there's no resolution for that. I feel like I've gone insane. So please, if you find the second part of this episode, let me know. I can't find it. Daily Motion, YouTube, it's all just with that one episode, and it ends on the to be continued sign. Now, recall when I said this. So, for this comparison, I just watched the first seasons of both shows. That was a lie. I ended up watching all 40 episodes of Eddie McDowd. And so, because of this, I then watched 40 episodes of My Name is Earl to keep the data even, I guess. So, after watching all of Eddie McDowd, he finished the 40 episode run having done 40 deeds. This comes out to a deed an episode. That's easy math. But it's wrong. As I said, there are 8 episodes in which Eddie doesn't accomplish a deed. On top of that, Season 1 ends with 88 deeds left to go. The whole series ends with 60 to go. Now, in 20 episodes left, there is no way he did 28 deeds to get to that 60. And that's even considering the fact that you could go, well, he does 2 deeds an episode at one point. He only does that once in the 40 episodes. So realistically, it shouldn't have happened. This doesn't even account for the fact that in Season 3 from deeds 77 to 60, they skip odd numbers. So in actuality, in the 40 episode run, he only actually does 32 deeds. But as I said in episode 14 of Season 1, he actually has a deed added to his total. So in reality, it's just 31 deeds. Because in math, when you deal with positive and negative numbers, they cancel each other out. So with that accounted for, and if you did the math ahead of my script, you'll know what's about to happen. Let's just do the math then. 100 minus 31 comes out to 69. Lamau. When I was in high school, each year we were required to do a certain number of hours of community service. Now, sure, you could do this because you actually wanted to get something meaningful out of it and rather not something materialistic. But for the most part, the students felt like it was a chore or an obligation. And this is mainly due because it mattered for whether or not you graduated. And I don't want to toot my own horn about this, but I broke the system. Over the summer going into my junior year, I worked at an overnight summer camp as a counselor in training, a CIT. I was able to get those hours counted, though usually if you had done hours over the summer, they counted for like half of your total hours for that year. But they changed the rule, and in that year I had done 6 full weeks of community service, 7 days as opposed to 5. And I ended up being in the top 1% of hours done in my junior year and getting a certificate for it. I remember my US history teacher reading the list, and he's a teacher who's very familiar with me as a person, and he paused at my name because he seemingly could not believe that I was on this list. The student who ended up being our valedictorian for my class was speechless that my name was even mentioned. I was one of the last people on the list. My friend and I were having 2 separate conversations. We both stopped, we turned to each other, and laughed. I laughed as I stood up, I laughed as I walked down the aisle, and I laughed as I received the award. Truth be told, I didn't feel like I had accomplished anything, and I didn't feel like what I had done had mattered. The award felt like a hollow victory, and maybe subconsciously I even knew that, as I ended up using my award as my scratch paper for my trig final. That is what Eddie McDowd felt like, doing something because you had to. Eddie was forced to do this. He would even fight back to attempt to stay true to who he was as a boy. It felt like at times teeth were being pulled while Eddie wasn't getting better. He was still the same. He made no real change. And worst of all, 12 of the 31 deeds he actually did were actually his fault. Think about it. He is supposed to do good deeds, do something unselfish, but almost half of the deeds he had done were problems he had created or contributed to. If anything, those 12 deeds are neutral and shouldn't really count. What the show illustrates better than the lessons of being a better person is the mass indifference kids often feel towards obligations. Sometimes what they do isn't out of the goodness of their heart, but because it's what the system expects of them. Teachers, adults, their parents. It's just something done out of obligation, not because they want to do it. Though I hope that's not as true as it is anymore. But I am alleviated to say that My Name is Earl works a bit better in this regard of trying to teach this lesson. You know, the kind of guy who does bad things and wonders why his life sucks. Well, that was me. Every time something good happened to me, something bad was always raining around the corner. Karma. That's when I realized I had to change. So I made a list of every bad thing I've ever done. One by one, I'm going to make up for all my mistakes. I'm just trying to be a better person. My name is Earl. I kind of wish I had started with My Name is Earl. It is a tad simpler in its design and easier to follow, though that might just be due to writing and production and all that stuff. Earl's sense of morality is self-imposed. Earl learned about karma and decided to throw himself into the deep end of it, in contrast to Eddie McDowd, who had half his deeds be his fault. Earl had nearly all of his deeds be his fault, though this was by design, as the list he had created was things he knew he had done wrong and wanted to atone for them, provided the motivation for Earl to be a better person, to fix his past so his future could also then become better. A typical episode of My Name is Earl went like this. The next deed would be established whether he or karma would pick it. Then by use of flashbacks, they would show what he did wrong. He then goes about to right his wrongs in a very straightforward and literal manner. It then evolves into something a tad more complicated that Earl feels obligated to fix. Now, let us throw an episode into this formula, and for the sake of some consistency, let's pick the same episode number as Eddie McDowd, Season 1, Episode 18. The episode shows young Earl and Randy stealing another kid's Mother's Day gift to give to their own mother.
We knew we'd find something good because Kenny's backpack was the same place we did our Christmas shopping.
When it is revealed that it's a homemade coupon book, they decide to not fulfill any of their mom's wishes. Now Earl and Randy go to their parents' home to give their mom a real Mother's Day. The day is nearly done, and they're doing one more thing for their mother, Earl's dad gets mad because he is reminded that Earl was an asshole.
Watching these movies, it just amazes me how you always had a way of ruining everything.
Dad, I didn't ruin everything, okay?
And that was the end of our home movies.
His mom's last coupon is Mother's Choice, and she chooses for Earl to do a nice thing for his dad. Earl remembers another list item in which he lost his dad's nice car in a drag race. Earl wins the car back and returns it to his dad. His dad then tells him that the car was in fact going to be a gift for him when he got his license. So, his dad amends the list to say,
Lost my own car because I'm an idiot.
As the conundrum of what do you do when you're on your own list, Earl decides to fix the car up for himself. But his dad watches him and sees him making a mistake, and his dad decides to help him. It's revealed then that his dad had saved a ton of car parts for this specific model of car, because there was something they wanted to do together, or his dad wanted to do. The car wasn't just meant to be for Earl. It was a way for his dad and him to build memories together.
And then it came to me. What I had cheated myself out of all those years ago wasn't a car. It was a chance to have some quality time with my dad.
So, realizing he deprived himself and his father of these memories, he decides to build them now. And as a result, they begin to rebuild this fractured relationship. Earl decides to leave the car with his dad so he can drive it, and it gives Earl a reason to visit.
Some people might think that leaving that car with my dad was an unselfish act, but I wasn't doing it for him. That car was the first good memory my dad and I had together, and I didn't want him to forget it.
I actually picked a seemingly complicated episode after I had just said the show was simpler. I'll still stand by that fact, but I have to admit I picked a more complex episode, more so than any of the other episodes I've watched. With that out of the way, I do have one more thing to atone for. Remember when I said this? And so, because of this, I then watched 40 episodes of My Name is Earl to keep the data even, I guess. That was another lie. Comedy rule of threes. I watched all 94 episodes of My Name is Earl, and thus became incredibly intimate with the show as a whole. I actively watched every episode. The sad part was, the note-taking process began to get a little sloppy because oftentimes they didn't dictate what was or was not a list item, and he often adds items to the list, sometimes in bulk. To top it off, the first half of Season 3 consists of Earl being in jail. He does continue to do good deeds, though. Sometimes it's a list item, and other times it's him helping the warden. This is mainly to help with him getting an early release. It's essentially doing good, much like the dog McDowd. It becomes difficult to log these and other problems as a fact. So, because of this, I'd be remiss not to talk about how Earl's list works. He'll do an item and cross it off, but he can also add items as he realizes them both past and present. The show and the My Name is Earl wiki stated that he had added from his original 258 item list 19 items, which I think is below what it actually is, despite the show explicitly saying 277. There are multiple times where he adds items in bulk and we don't really know how many. Like there's a Cops episodes in Season 2 where he doesn't do a deed but adds many to his list.
Even if it did remind me of a few things I needed to put on my list.
I added 3, but it could have been 1, it could have been 3, it could have been 8. I have no way of knowing. He also mentions he had to add a child to the list for stealing from her to help with another deed. The wiki doesn't account for that being added to the list. I have Earl at about 289 items. This is give or take 10. I also have him at completing 121 of his items, also give or take 10. This is also in contrast to the wiki that has him at least 95, which I think is a gross underestimate. But like I said, it's tough to say what was or wasn't a list item for Earl. I might have double counted some of his items as he did 2 separate things to help one person. I will say this though, My Name is Earl does try to impart some real wisdom, as if it were a modern day parable, kind of like the Bible, but a lot of people don't do the lessons of the Bible. They kind of just use it to say white people are wrong. And instead of, that's a kind of a religious argument I don't really want to get into because I'm not really religious, and that's really none of my business. He does legitimately believe in karma, and in turn becomes a better person because of it. And if that also leads people to attempting to become a better person, more power to them. I'm not going to stop them. But that's not what's important here. I have a hypothesis to see through. I'm Eddie McDowd. You know, the kind of guy who does bad things and wonders why his life sucks? Welp, that was me. I used to be a kid. A bad kid. Every time something good happened to me, something bad was always raining around the corner. Karma. That freak turned me into a dog. To be a kid again, I have to do 100 good deeds. One by one, I'm going to make up for all my mistakes. I'm just trying to be a better dog. My name is Earl. When I started this asinine project, I threw myself into an echo chamber of 100 Deeds of Eddie McDowd, and my name is Earl. I had a visceral and vivid dream about my late dog talking to me, telling me about how he ruined my dad's day and that he had to fix it. For the briefest of moments, I was happily tweeting about Eddie McDowd having a great time. Then episode 5 hit, and my brain was like, hey, you should be making a spreadsheet. Then it stopped being a great time. At one point, my friend messaged me asking me about a skateboarding anime. The conversation went like this. When is that skateboarding anime gonna come out? It seems so cool. Have no idea what you're talking about. I don't really pay attention to anime stuff. Trailer to the anime. You have my interest. It started January 10th. I can't watch it because I'm knee deep in another show. I think they took inspiration from her Skitter XL highlights. Nah, it was Tiny Hawk. Also, don't tell me you can't watch the skateboarding anime because you're too busy with Eddie McDowd. I finished Eddie McDowd. Then what are you watching that's more important? Well, you fucking idiot. Here is what's more important. I'm sorry that I had created a self-deprivation tank of My Name is Earl and Eddie McDowd. I'm sorry that you don't think My Name is Earl and Eddie McDowd are important. I'm sorry that I lose sleep staring at my ceiling thinking about how these two shows are so damn similar instead of fanciful worlds or fixing a mistake or winning an argument I might have lost. What I love, I sue, I seek a wife, a woman that is like a German clerk, still air repairing and never out of frame and never going right. Being a watch that may still go right. All this to say that yes, this is more important. More important than some skateboarding anime that, yes, I did watch an episode of. And when I finished that episode, I said, that was a show. So you don't get to tell me what I should or should not watch or what is or is not important. That was weird. So let's get into some loose similarities. These two shows are very close in terms of structure and writing. It's crazy that this happened at all. I'm amazed two people independently thought of roughly the same show idea, and they both aired within 5 years of each other. How did this even happen? I don't know an answer to this question, because why would that be something I tried to figure out? It's not really the point I'm trying to make here. It's also way above anything I could ever reasonably find, because seemingly no one thinks about this at all. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. If the ratings aren't good or if the show gets canceled, doesn't really matter who thinks about these shows anymore. And both of these shows ended before any real resolution could be reached. Eddie McDowd was canceled due to low ratings, which I didn't expect a kids network to truly care about, seeing as kids would just turn on the TV and watch just about anything. This is doubly weird that only the real competition in that demographic came from Cartoon Network. This was seeing as Disney had a lot of DComs at the time, but they're really only used for one viewings and not multiples. And their original programming of shows weren't that robust and drew in a crowd. The Disney Junior or whatever the kids channel shows were probably more popular, I guess, in contrast. And looking back at 1999, when it premiered, it had some heavy hitters on both networks. SpongeBob and Rocket Power started that year alongside of Eddie McDowd on Nickelodeon, while Cartoon Network had Ed, Edd and Eddy and Courage starting. Those are 4 shows that were watched by so many people and are in the rate, like, just the zeitgeist of millennial, like, reference. And when the show was canceled in 2002, Nick was beginning to focus on more of its older properties, with movies, both theatrical and made for TV. So any support or promotion that might have happened was being pushed to the wayside. This is all an idea, not really true. My Name is Earl, in contrast, though, was a highly rated show at one point. It was the best in its demographic, 18 to 49, which is some consider the most important demographic. But for some reason, it was pulled from NBC, and 20th Century couldn't find a taker, though this was mainly due because anyone who would take it might have had plans to ruin the artistic integrity of the show, which I respect. The creator did say how the show would have ended in an AMA, and I actually think it's a rather good ending. In short, Earl would have been stuck on a tough task and was thinking about quitting. He meets someone with a list, and Earl is on it. He asked where he got the idea for this list and learned he got it from someone else with also a list, and so on. This is essentially showing that even though Earl might not have felt he was doing good because it was low impact stuff, he was somehow getting a message out there for other people to do it. And in turn, that was all the real good he could have possibly have asked for. Eddie McDowd had no real closure of its own, though fans of the show say there was a unaired 41st episode somewhere, with both resolutions being he was turned into a kid and forgot about ever being a dog, and also being a dog forever. Now, that's not really all that important to this video at all. This is just how shows would have ended. That doesn't really truly matter in the grand scheme of things. I stated that the two titular characters were doing what they were doing for morally different reasons. Eddie McDowd is being forced to do this, with the man who had turned him into a dog constantly telling him that he's doing a bad job of trying to become a kid again. The main issue of that being that Eddie never truly wants to do these deeds in the first place. He selfishly does a lot of these deeds because he is aware that if he does these deeds, it would inevitably give him what he wants. What they should have been teaching was the Earl method, one who is willing to make a change in their lifestyle and wants to do things to be better. This happens because he wins the lottery, and subsequently loses that winning ticket because of karma. While in the hospital after being hit by a car, he's watching TV and Carson Daly mentions something about karma, and Earl vows to make a change. He inevitably does get his ticket back, and does receive this life-changing money. But he still feels the need to do good things, be a better person. Because even though he has that good fortune, he still thinks it's a reward for being a better person. So really, Earl continues to want to be a better person, meanwhile Eddie does this out of obligation, a stark contrast. This is evident by the volume of deeds Earl does in comparison to Eddie. At the 40 episode mark, Earl had accomplished 16 more deeds than Eddie, and when he learns that he has done something wrong, he adds it to his list. In terms of some rough numbers, Earl does technically accomplish more than Eddie. Eddie ends up doing 1.25 deeds an episode, while Earl does 1.28 an episode. This is using my numbers, though, and not the wikis. Structurally, these shows are also very similar. We, the viewer, learn about what the deed they're supposed to be doing is. We then witness them interact with the deed only to learn that it wasn't the full story. It goes deeper and they must do more to help. Sometimes we get episodes where they bang out a deed early on just so we can set up for classic sitcom shenanigans. The shows start incredibly similar as well, with the titular characters losing something they value. Earl lost his chance at having money that could effectively change his life before getting hit by a car. He loses it all, but he does end up getting it back. But as a consequence for him doing deeds, he does subsequently lose it all doing a deed while in prison. There is a point where Melissa Milano gives him a lot of money when they divorce so he could keep doing good things because she effectively believes in him after she didn't believe in him. Meanwhile, Eddie's childhood was taken away from him because obviously he was turned into a dog. And as a consequence, his parents no longer exist. They just kind of plopped them out of existence because I imagine it would be a logistical nightmare to explain this existential conundrum to children. They could have just opted to do what they did in Harry Potter, which make Hermione's parents forget they even had a daughter. That would have been a more simpler solution, though I guess more complicated because Eddie does go look for his parents. But the similarities don't end there, though. It's incredibly weird how close the main characters line up. Though, if you strip away a lot of what makes that character who they are in the show, this is bound to happen. But on the surface level, the analogy still stands. Obviously, we have Eddie and Earl being on the same moral journey. But let's go further. Justin, the kid who Eddie lives with, and Randy, Earl's brother, act in a similar manner. They are a support system for the main characters to lean on while they're doing these deeds. Gwen, Justin's sister, and Joy, Earl's ex-wife, are an antagonistic force that the characters have to deal with. Though, as the show progresses, Joy does become a better person because she cares more about her family. And Gwen moves to London because the actress was so embarrassed being on a show with a talking dog that they decided to not be on the show anymore. Sarifa, Brenda Song, and Catalina are friends of the characters and are often popping in to help them with tasks or just there to spend time with them. Hell, you can even say that the Drifter, the man who turns Eddie McDowd into a dog, and Karma serve in a similar capacity. They are the force that is driving these characters to do what they're doing. These broad strokes of these characters make it incredibly easy to find these similarities, but it shouldn't take away from the fact that I'm still very correct. Over 30 minutes ago, thereabouts, I stated my hypothesis that My Name is Earl is just an adult 100 Deeds of Eddie McDowd. When watching the shows and tracking my haphazard data, I observed truly no noticeable difference in the shows. But that I mean, outside of the writing and the setups, the shows are contextually still the same, trying to impart some kind of wisdom about being a better person. It's kind of what I'm meaning. If you go to the base form, and that's kind of really what it is, because in pitch meetings, you kind of have to do these short pitches to say what the show is. So really, if you go into the pitch meeting, these shows are kind of the same. Quality of the shows aside, I voted that for a reason, because this isn't a critique of those shows. There does seem to be some intrinsical value of these shows, something that the viewers could absorb and learn from to be a better person, but I'm not sure how important that really is. They try to impart wisdom, but I don't know how absorbed it was by viewers. And granted, I think I'm in general a decent person. At least I hope I am. I'm more concerned about bigger real world problems that I think should be fixed, though I am one person and I don't really have the wherewithal to fix the problems I think that should be fixed. My voice is very teeny tiny, itsy bitsy, and so when I say like people should have healthcare, people don't really pay attention. But that's not really something I'm trying to get into right now. This is about how these shows are exactly the same. So let's just say that I was right. I knew I was right going in, but that was more at as base as possible. But let's ignore that fact. It's more insane that these shows were so close together to each other in production that people didn't really pay attention at all. Especially when you consider that time is a man-made construct, and that, these shows, in the grand scheme of things, came out very close to each other. So, in reality, I was right. Hot dang, what a day.